Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. This way, if I was the governor or if I was, the Speaker of the House or something, I might be able to help you, but I'm just a broker, sir, and I'm just doing what Carr is telling me to do, right? I'm using the forms that, I'm following the laws that were passed. So, it's a frustrating thing for people. And this buyer broker agreement, this buyer representation agreement is a real subject with me. It's something that for 30 plus years that I've been doing this, I have been teaching people about how important it is to have a written agreement with a buyer before you ever even put them in your car, because of liability, because of clarification, and the thing is, what people fear the most, Kevin, is what they don't know. Okay. And what these realtors don't understand and what they don't know is that when they sit with a client and they are prospective client and they actually fill out the paperwork with them, and that client signs on the line that's dotted to a person, they will tell you afterwards that was when their anxiousness dropped. That was when they relaxed. That was when they knew that they had a contractual relationship with that practitioner and they could now go forward in good faith. Okay. That is so unbelievably important in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of clarification, right? And giving them a solid foundation and a solid footing in terms of how they feel about working with that real estate professional.
Sure. And the standard that we follow, the standard of care, that's my expertise at trial, is standard of care of the real estate agent. And so I look at it, when I teach the lawyers what the liquidated damages provision means, it takes me a couple of hours, but I've rarely had any real estate agent ever be able to explain it to me. Right. I mean, correctly, right? I mean, I can see it like I'm reading Miranda, right? I mean, it's just, I can see and I've never had anybody explain it to me right. And so I worry about that. I mean, I'm like, okay, so I always say that the time to read the contract the first time is not when you're sitting in front of the client. I think you need to be going to classes. And again, you and I, we're of the same ilk on that. But I think that we have such an opportunity to do well and to help people and I think we blow it. I think we get, sometimes we get like the longer that they're in business, the more they think they know. And we know that there are time, when you hit 2 years, this is how you're going to act. And when you hit 5, and then when you hit 10 years, then now you try to recycle yourself and start over. But it's just interesting to me. There are so many educational opportunities that are out there, and then people just don't take advantage of them. And so I think that's really sad. My RPA class, my residential purchase agreement class, is 5 hours long. I mean, and it's not enough time. And so I wrote it.
Document. That's a long document, Kevin.
It's 16 pages of happiness, and then that's before you get to the ancillary forms, right? All the,
we're not even talking addendums and disclosures,
absolutely. Right? And people say to me, because I have the 1-page purchase agreement, I actually have it on my desk. I just got to figure out a place to put it. I think I'm going to put it on a wall, but 1971 copyright, right? And so I tell everybody, I say right here in the middle, this is why we have 16 pages today. And it says, here's the terms of the contract. And we were writing the terms of the contract, and we were practicing law. That's against the law, right? And so we were telling people that we were creating documentation that would be binding on the parties and enforceable and all that kind of stuff. We were writing our own stuff. And so the Department of Real Estate, by your virtue of your license, they give you the right to explain the standard form. right? And so CAR said about the task of, okay, well, you're writing in language about, sell or replace all bent and broken window screens, and we're just going to put it in the contract. And so they created a language that worked. And so that's why you see this thing go like, went from what, 1 page to 2 to 4 to 8, and then it went to 10, and everybody's like, would you get it back to 6? And it's like, it is never going to happen. And now today we're at 16. And by the way, the between that and the buyer representation agreement, I think it's a stroke of genius. I mean, I look at the form, like the current purchase agreement, it reads like a grid, right? Paragraph number 3, it's all a grid. And I remember, because I did a presentation for the Department of Real Estate, 4 hours. They wanted me to explain the RPA to them. And so I did a presentation for them. And I said, here's our biggest fear is that the real estate agent will stop at the end of page 3, right? Because paragraph 3 ends at page 3. That's intentional. We did that on purpose. And so, so the problem is we put up at the beginning of 3, this form has 16 pages. You were advised to read all 16 pages. And so I had to laugh. I said, we should put in there, and you, the realtor, should read all 16 pages, right? I mean, because it's an amazing document. I have people calling me up on the forum or calling me on the phone, and they'll ask me a question. And I'll say, well, what does paragraph 5B say? And they go, 5B, what's that? I go, well, you go take a look at it, and if you still have a question, give me a holler, right? Then they go back and they read it. They go, oh my God, I get it, right? But you got to go past page 3.
The answer is actually there.
Because the way they did it, I'm not going to, David Kerr is an amazingly bright man. So he put with his task force, they put this together. Anyway, after page 3, there's nothing to do. Right. And so that's why people stop. And it's like, no, you need to start, right? Because the rest of it is what explains paragraph number 3. So just little stuff like that. But I get so somebody said to me last night on the phone, they said, I did a 2-hour presentation yesterday on the buyer representation agreement, right? A webinar. And so this gal goes to her brokerage. She says, this guy is amazing, talking about me. He says he talked for 2 hours and didn't take a breath. And the broker responded, because he calls me on the phone. He's a super guy. And he responded, he says, that's because he loves what he does. And he's enthusiastic about it. And he wants to principally help people. I teach the code of ethics, and that broker happens to be the only other instructor who teaches the code of ethics. And I said, we always want to trust people that teach the code of ethics, right? I mean, we have a code that we follow. So, but I get passionate about it. And I think that, I don't think real estate is that difficult. Real estate is easy. Comedy is hard. It's that kind of a thing. So, but we live in a great time, and there's so much opportunity for people to do things the right way, and hopefully do them the right way the first time. And so my phone normally rings. People are in trouble for something, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of it, or they'll start the sentence off with, "I know the law says," and I say, "Hold on right there. I'm not going to help you break the law. I mean, it's just not my thing, right?" And so. But it's interesting. We it's a great time. I don't know, what is this, market conditions. I'm also an expert witness on market, specifically San Diego County, and people are complaining about the market. I said, well, you probably complain in any market, right? I mean, it's like, it's your personal market.
Well, so having done this for 31 years, in February, it'll be 32. Okay. To say that I've seen different markets is an understatement, right? When I got in the business in 1992, interest rates had just come from 10% down to 9.5%, 30-year fixed. Okay. And everybody was screaming that deflation's coming and all this other stuff. And we literally went into, in 1992, an honest to goodness real estate depression in San Diego. The Clinton administration was trying to cash in on the peace dividend. They were literally slashing defense budgets like there was no tomorrow. They were trying to balance the budget, all these types of wonderful things, right? And what happened was we had so many defense contractors here. And I mean, there were a lot of people here that worked for the defense industry here in San Diego, concentrated here. And all of a sudden, one day they pulled the plug and they went to Texas, or they went to Louisiana, or they went to Georgia, right? And they left here like that. And we had to sell a lot of houses to a very small number of people that were coming in, right? That, I mean, we didn't have what we have today, which is this sort of upside down inventory situation. And so I remember times when the average time on market was 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, the average time on market is 34 days, and people are losing their minds because
Yeah.
a lot of them, Kevin, have been in the business in the last 6 years. That's
Yes.
all they know, right? And I'm working with people, no joke, that have not been in the business, have not been in the business before 2008. They were in the business after it, okay? And the idea of another recession hitting, a lot of people have PTSD about that. And so they're thinking the other shoe's going to drop any minute. I've got a buddy of mine that's one of the top one of the top traders. He's a fund manager on Wall Street, and he's one of the top brains on Wall Street. Right, 43 years he and I have been friends. Last year he predicted that we were going into a recession when Silicon Valley Bank and those other 3-4 banks failed. Yeah. He absolutely thought that lending was going to be constricted rapidly, right? And it was going to force us into another recession. And he was wrong. It didn't happen. And he openly admits it. We've interviewed him twice now for our podcast. He openly admits it. The thing is, people are waiting for this shoe to drop. They're waiting for this great recession to happen. And it doesn't look like to me fundamentally that it's going to happen. It doesn't look like to me that we're in the same place we were in 2008. But here's the thing. Even if we do go into a recession, you have any idea how many recessions I've been through in my career? It's not the end of the world, right? There are people that are wanting to jump into your silo in Arizona, right? I mean, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. So anyway, it really it's a whole lot to do about very little, right?
I was knocking on doors in the 80s when interest rates were at 24.
Yeah.
And they had just dropped to 12.
Yeah.
And I remember knocking on a woman's door, and I remember where it was. And I remember asking her, have you refied your home? No. And I said, well, what's your interest rate right now? She says 24%. I says, they're at 12. Why don't you refi? And she goes, because I don't trust banks. And I said, well, you trusted them at one point because you got a 24% interest rate.
Right.
Could you imagine dropping? And so then, and you've been around a long time. I mean, you've been with this in the day when we had interest rates under 3, and then having people say, I mean, God, what is a single digit, interest rate? That's crazy. Exactly. And it's still that, right? Yeah. But people are, saying, well, we're going to wait for the interest rates to go down. And I'm like, to what? Right. I mean, it's like, what are you waiting for? That's just an excuse, right? So, I want to go work with people that actually want to find housing. And so, but you're right. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Here's what's interesting to me. Okay. If you look at the market back when interest rates were 3 and 4%, okay, people were overbidding, and I was trying to buy a house for my family, no joke, when all this was going down. And we found a house, my wife and I, in an area where she had grown up, not far from where my father-in-law, her dad, lives right now. And he's getting older, and we wanted to be closer to him. Okay, so we found this house, no joke, Kevin. This house needed to be fixed stem to stern. It was completely outdated. Like the most updated thing was a kitchen that had been remodeled 20 years ago. I'm not joking. Okay. We put in an offer just above the list price. I think I was 20,000 above the list price. Do you know that that house went for $181,000 above list price? And there were 12 offers.
Yeah.
There were 12 offers. And it was at that moment that I knew that we were not going to be buying a pre-owned home. We were going to be buying a new one. And we did. We bought a new home, moved in, the whole thing. And what's fascinating to me is back when interest rates were so low, money was practically free. Okay. Wow. And people were throwing it around like there was no tomorrow. No joke. Right. Today, you're not seeing that same run up. You're literally seeing sellers willing to give a credit for flooring. They're willing to give a credit for closing costs. They're willing to help the buyer qualify. That you have not seen in years. Right. And I mean in years. Okay. Right now is the time to buy, negotiate, get what you can. And then when interest rates drop, just refinance and drop your interest rate.
In my expert opinion, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're pretty clueless in San Diego. I mean, it's always been, the economy has always been what's happening to other people in other parts of the world. And I've been through four major changes in economy, none of which impacted my business at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I just continued to help people. There's always people out there that wanted help, and I always found a lot of pride in that. And I joked about getting rid of clients. I love my clients. I've got a guy that's done 23 transactions with me. I mean, he's just, and I got him because, because he had called the listing agent on a property in Del Mar, a little condo, and the guy wouldn't return his call because it was only a $77,000 condo, right? And so I went ahead and I said, well, come on into the office, I'll chat with you. 23 deals later, right? I mean, it's like, wow, he's buying a $77,000 condo, but then, years later, we're doing 2 million, all that kind of stuff. So take care of people, not because of what you're going to get at, not because of the money. You take care of people because of the feeling that you get. I've got a property right now that I've been handling as a rental. I couldn't believe it's 25 years. I don't do property management, right? But I do coach property management companies. But this guy, I started renting his place out for $1,200 a month. I mean, it's got creosote hanging from the ceiling, all kind, it's just a neat place. $1,200 a month, and now he's at like $5,800 a month, and it's just over that period of time, but it, and he says, you're my guy, I'm not going anywhere else, and I ended up with him because his guy from before just stopped communicating with me. You've got to talk to people. And I think that our biggest fear is, I believe you really have to stick your head in the mouth of the lion. I think that our thing is that things are going to happen in a real estate transaction. You've got to know that they're going to happen, but your job is to help people, and not hide from it. And where I see the litigation that I'm involved in, all of which is always somebody else's, right? But which I'm proud of that too, right? But I got to tell you, it's usually because you stop talking to them. It's like you didn't want to, you thought they were angry with you. Well, they're going to get angry. They're going to get angrier if you don't at least talk with them. But if you're talking with them, then I find that you can always find a solution. But once you cut that off, you're in trouble. There's going to be a problem.
You're going to court. It's that simple.
Yeah. You've got we call him the cocktail attorney, right? You're at a cocktail party, and somebody said, I had one where the agent had told the seller, the law requires a termite clearance. There's no such thing. It's a wood destroying organism clearance, right? So and there's no such law, by the way. And so she told her seller that there was one, and so he ends up bagging the house and paying all this money to do all this stuff. And I represented the buyer, and we never even asked for it. And so, later on, of course, a year later, he's off at a cocktail party and he finds out there is no such law. And so, we have paragraph 12B1C, which is the paragraph in the purchase agreement that addresses wood destroying organisms. It's the buyer's job is to investigate. The agent's job is only to do a reasonably competent, diligent visual inspection of the accessible area of the property. That came out of the Easton case, and you kind of referred to it a minute ago. That was when a lot of things really changed to make it more of a seller disclosure issue, rather than, the buyer, you figure it out. I don't have to tell you what, you're going to have to find it out for yourself. Well, no. So the seller's duty is only to disclose the seller what they knew or should have known. They don't investigate their own property. That's the buyer's job. And I've had buyers say, well, I figured that the seller's duty of disclosure and the agent's duty to inspect and disclose would satisfy my requirement to investigate the property. You're protected by civil code. You needed to do that, and you chose not to do it. And even our forms, if you've read the bottom of the Avid form, page 1, it even says, that that's your job. You're investigating the property. And so here the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm seeing now the litigation, and I didn't tell you, but I'm also chair of the expert witness forum next year at CAR. And we're seeing lawsuits from the transactions where the buyers were going in, removing contingencies at the time of the offer, including the investigation contingency and things like that. And so, and now they're like, well, the seller didn't tell me this was wrong with the house. And if I had an inspection done of the house, then I would have known about it. And of course, somebody told me I didn't have to do one, or you didn't have a contingency. I wrote an offer for a Navy SEAL. I do a lot of military, and this guy's super guy, really like him, his family, wonderful family. And I wrote an offer for him on a property, and the seller's agent says, we're only taking non-contingent offers. And so I went to my buyer and I said, they said they're only taking non-contingent offers, right? Always quote the source. Mm-hmm. So I said, they're only taking non-contingent offers. And he says, well, okay. And I said, I don't think you should do that. I recommend against you doing that. And besides your VA, you can't be non-contingent. I mean, you have your mandatory clause, you've got things like that, And so he says, I don't care. I want the house. And I went, okay. So anyway, I had him sign off on forms and stuff, so he knew what he was doing. And then I called the seller's agent 2 days into the transaction, and I said, we've got the physical inspection scheduled for Thursday. And this guy's the broker, and he says, you don't have a physical inspection contingency. I says, I understand that, but we're still going to do a physical inspection. Right. And he goes, let me get back to you. And so, of course, he doesn't call me back, right? What he does is he sends me an email that says, go ahead and do your inspection, right? Because the buyer may waive the contingency, but they don't waive their right to do.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.